Pope Leo carries cross. A historic Good Friday at the Colosseum, a Roman night of solemnity, Pope Leo carries the cross. An historic act of devotion at the Colosseum marks a turning point in modern papal history. In the cool, amber-lit air of the Roman night, the silence was heavy with the weight of centuries. On a Good Friday that will be etched into the annals of the Church, Pope Leo did what many thought impossible. He stood, grasped the heavy wooden cross, and led the entire way of the cross, Via Crucis, procession at the Colosseum on foot. Historic context. For the first time in over 3 decades, a Roman pontiff has completed the full 14-station procession while physically carrying the cross. This act of profound endurance has sent ripples through the Vatican and the global Catholic community. The return to tradition. The Via Crucis at the Colosseum is perhaps the most visually striking event of the liturgical year. Torchlight flickered against the ancient stone arches as the Pope began his ascent. Since the latter years of Pope John Paul II's papacy, the physical toll of the service has usually required the pontiff to preside from a seated position or carry the cross for only a final symbolic distance. Pope Leo, however, chose a different path. Informed sources within the Vatican suggest the Pope began a rigorous physical and spiritual preparation months in advance, specifically to honor this traditional act of penance. The sight of the white-clad figure silhouetted against the dark, jagged ruins of Rome, burdened by the timber cross, evoked images of the early church that many feared had been lost to the pragmatism of the modern age. The cross is not a display of power, but a manifestation of love that bears all things. Tonight we walk as pilgrims of sorrow, yet witnesses to hope. A Pope Leo, opening meditation, key moments of the procession station 4. The meeting. As the Pope reached the 4th station, symbolizing Jesus meeting his mother, he paused for a prolonged moment of silence that lasted nearly 3 minutes, visibly moved by the meditation written by a group of refugees. Station 9. The Fall. Despite a slight stumble on the uneven Roman pavers, the Pope refused assistance from his aides, gripping the cross tighter and continuing the ascent towards the Palatine Hill. The weight of the world. The meditations for this year's Via Crucis, personally selected by Pope Leo, focused heavily on the themes of global conflict, environmental degradation, and the plight of the marginalized. Each step the Pope took seemed to mirror the heavy nature of the prayers being offered. For the thousands lining the streets and the millions watching via satellite, the physical effort was palpable. Observers noted that unlike previous years where the cross was shared among families, athletes, and clergy from different continents, Leo held the cross for the first 7 stations entirely alone. At the halfway point, he was joined by a family from war-torn Ukraine and a doctor from the Democratic Republic of Congo, symbolizing a shared burden of suffering. A symbolic resilience. Theological experts suggest this act was intended to signal a vigorous papacy. After years of health concerns surrounding the Holy See, Pope Leo's stamina is being seen as a metaphor for a church that is active, suffering alongside its flock, and physically present in the struggle of faith. The silence of the night. As the procession reached the final stations, the wind began to pick up, whipping the Pope's pallium. The liturgical choir of the Sistine Chapel provided a haunting backdrop of Gregorian chants, their voices echoing against the travertine walls of the amphitheater. When the Pope finally reached the end of the 14th station, he knelt before the cross for several minutes. The fatigue was evident on his face, but so was a sense of profound spiritual resolve. Why this event matters. Physical witness. It reaffirms the central Christian motif of bearing the cross through physical sacrifice. 2. Historical break. It ends a 30-year trend of papal frailty during this specific Good Friday rite. 3. Global message. The stamina shown is interpreted as a message of strength to a church facing internal and external crises. A legacy reclaimed. As the city lights of Rome twinkled in the distance and the torches were extinguished, the image of Pope Leo carrying the cross remained burned into the minds of the faithful. It was a night where liturgy met endurance, and where the ancient stones of the Colosseum witnessed a rebirth of a tradition of physical penance that many believed had passed into history. Vatican International Press, subscribe.